And good morning, everybody. We're live. Congratulations. You made it through the week. Another week of fantastic food safety, food quality, putting food on the table of America around the world and giving those people the nourishment that they need. And as is often the case in food safety and food quality, it's an unheralded role. And everybody just expects that what happens, happens. But we know, Campbell and I know that that's not the case. And so we wanted to start off with the chat here today, if you're new, to say thank you. We really appreciate all that you do. So of course, this is the Food Safety Chat. And every Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern on LinkedIn and YouTube, we live stream and we talk about all things food safety. And this is the highlight of my week because I get to bring amazing people like Campbell Mitchell on the show with me. Campbell, how are you doing today, sir?
Very good. How are you, Bryan?
Doing well, doing well. It's a beautiful, beautiful day here in Colorado. I think we were talking a little bit about the weather here before we went live. It's going to be 63 degrees Fahrenheit here today, Campbell.
Yeah, we're getting cold, 35.
Let's see. I always try and let's see. So for we always have tons of guests around the world, and you probably think,
yeah, 35 sounds quite nice.
Yeah, so a nice balmy 17C. I can't beat that. Now, this is where Colorado can really fool you because really going into March, April is when we get most of our snow. And so it starts getting, it starts getting nice out. If it's exceptionally nice, the leaves start coming out, which then is absolutely disastrous. Because if you do get a wet, heavy snow in the spring, it just absolutely destroys the trees. And so where are you at today?
I'm in Michigan, so yeah, it's getting cold. I think I'm going to get snow this weekend.
Oof. Kasia, good morning. Yes, he's up in the Minneapolis area, so good to see you. So as part of that, as Tasia knows very well, is please, everybody, let us know where in the world you're at. Elena, good to see you. Cheryl. It's just so cool. It's like, Campbell, it's like having a group of friends that gets together every Friday and talks about this stuff. So it's super cool. And the dedication, because as you know, you're a very busy guy. Devoting an hour every week to join the chat and listen in is a significant investment of time, and we appreciate what everybody does. Oh, good. Tim's back home. Tim, the road warrior, is back home, so that's excellent. Always good to hear. So, of course, if you're familiar with the chat, Campbell Mitchell has been on the chat before, and we always have the best conversations. And so Campbell is head of quality and food safety for a large American beverage company. And if you're on LinkedIn at all, you're seeing quite a bit of him out there and his company. So with that, it kind of naturally tied with our topic today, which we'll kind of get to here in a bit. But before we do, everybody, please join us for a drink of your favorite beverage on this fine morning. Cheers. Very nice. Very nice. Cheers. At Costco, I found there's a Mexican coffee, and they're kind of branding it Mayan and things like that. It's like a 5-pound bag, giant, huge bag of coffee for like $45 of beans. And so it's a fantastic roast. So Costco always does a great job.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, we're addicted to Costco for sure. So with this, one of the traditions that I love to torture our guests and attendees here on the chat with Campbell is, of course, the dad joke. Are you ready, sir?
Yes.
So bit of a change here today because this statistic really caught my attention. So I wanted to share this with you as well this morning, Campbell. So did you know that according to a recent survey, 6 of the 7 dwarves are not happy?
I'll say
you got to let that one kind of it settles, and you have to kind of wallow in it for a bit. Apologies, everyone. So let's dive in. We got a ton to talk about here today. So as we talk about here on the chat quite a bit, there's very important aspects associated with your job that you need to know from a technical standpoint. But as Campbell knows very well, when you're in any type of a leadership position, it's the people that make you successful. And it works both ways. So you need to build a fantastic team. And conversely, if you don't have that team, you're in trouble. but you also have to support that team and nurture and build them for the future. And it's the vast majority of what you're actually doing in your job when you run a department is the people side of things, isn't it?
Yep. I think that's probably one of the most critical skills, is being able to the right person in the right place at the right time, and keep them there, you know.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Is you can have fantastic team members,
Oh,
but if
we're
they're in the
frozen.
wrong role, that's not good either.
I lost you there for a minute.
Oh, I can hear you, but your picture is frozen. There we are, coming back. So there's a saying around that is that you're only as good as your team. And what we wanted to talk about here today is some of the tips and tricks and methods that we use to help find good people and retain, right? Because that's part of it too, isn't it? Is retaining those people. We'll see if this buffers here a bit, guys.
Sorry about that.
No worries, no worries.
We're internet issue today, sorry.
It's we'll work through it. This is an important topic and we'll be just fine. So as I was saying, is you're only as good as your team. And what we wanted to talk about today is how you build that team. And one of the most important things that I wanted to get your comments around this, Campbell, is a lot of people are scared by this, but really when you're hiring top talent, you always need to be thinking about your backfill. If you want to advance in the company and move on to bigger things, you have to be constantly training that person who's going to be taking over your role, don't you?
Yeah, I agree. You should always have bench strength. I'm from New Zealand. I'm a strong supporter of the All Blacks and a rugby team. Yes. And you know, the bench and rugby, you know, is just as strong as the players on the field. You know, being able to have somebody that can take your place is a key element of success in a strong performing team.
Yeah, absolutely. And so part of this, I think too, is this false notion that we have in our roles in quality and food safety is that it all falls on our shoulders and we have to do everything ourselves. And one of the best lessons and one of the greatest stress relievers in a leadership role in these type of positions is being able to give things to those trusted team members and know that it's taken care of. And that if they need help, that they're going to reach out. And I think it all kind of comes back to, there's a saying that I always use, Campbell, which is, don't surprise me, right? The last thing I want is to be in a meeting with my boss and he knows something that I don't. And that's a very awkward position to be in. So don't ever surprise me.
It's the speed of trust. You know, you build trust with your teams, build trust with your boss, and you have trust that they can do their job when you're not there. Gives a lot of peace of mind, definitely.
Yep. Yeah. So interesting comment here. Your team is only as good as you. And I agree with that. So part of the statement around that, I'll get your take on this as well, Campbell, is you don't really work for a company. You do in a lot of aspects for benefits and all these other things, but in reality, your world is shaped by your boss. If you have a good boss, life is pretty good. If you have a bad boss, you're in a bad spot, and the company becomes secondary. If you have a good boss and they do a good job in a company that's mediocre or not so good of protecting you and helping you grow and shield you, your life is a lot easier. Conversely, if you have a poor boss in a good company, your life is not fun at all.
And there's been a lot of studies done on that. Most people leave a company not because of the company, but because of their boss. It's definitely a key relationship. You probably spend more time with your boss than you do with your partner during the week, at least.
Yeah, I mean, especially what we do, right? We invest huge amounts of time in the company. We are there all the time. And if you're a quality manager in a plant, you're living there. You're spending 60, 70, 80 hours a week sometimes in that plant, making things that they work well. So you need to make sure that part of your life is rewarding and balanced, and your boss plays a huge part in that. So part of that, as a point around this, is that when you're looking at a potential new role, it's a two-way street. So it's always remember to have the mindset of you're interviewing for a role, but you're also interviewing them. you're interviewing them to determine if it's a good fit or not. A lot of times, if you're in a position where you need a new job, you're desperate and you're looking, and you'll take whatever comes first. That is often a mistake. So it's just as important. And you need to have questions around that when you're speaking to someone about a potential role of, is this the right fit for me? And kind of that main question is, if I'm working for Campbell, is this somebody I'm going to like working with? And you need to think about that really hard.
Yeah.
Wow, these comments are coming fast. I love it. Excellent, guys. Keep it up. So kind of what we wanted to go over here today is how we approach the hiring process. And in my book sitting back here, I wrote a whole section of my book around hiring because it's really that important. And so what I wanted to go over today with you is your processes and some of the tips and tricks and things that you look at, Campbell, when you're evaluating people for your teams. So how do you, where do you find good people?
I think the food industry network is quite small. A lot of people know of other people, and I think it's very important if you're looking for a job or looking to move on to that next step in your career, to maintain that network and build up those relationships. Research companies that you would want to work with based on other people that have worked there, and then form those bonds, join those industry associations, those industry groups, go to the conferences that other people go to. So that goes both ways. So when I'm looking for people, I'm looking for people that are sort of floating in the similar sort of circles, have the right level of experience. But then also, there's a lot of informal sort of reputational type checks that you do. You speak to somebody that knows somebody that has heard of somebody or worked with somebody, and that can often be the difference between landing a job and not landing a job.
That is so important. I have some people that I work with, one of my clients who had a layoff, and so I'm helping some of them find new roles. And I've been able to connect some of them with people that I know. And just that brief introduction of, hey, this is this person, and I think you should really consider them for any open roles you may have. Nice, simple, to the point, isn't being pushy, just doing a recommendation and a referral. Boy, that goes a long way.
Yep. And paying it forward, people, you help other people, and then when it comes to times of need, they help you, and I think that's the way it goes for the good people in the industry, and before you know it, you've got a good reputation.
Oh, that is so important. And you'd referenced that earlier as well, Campbell, is that we work in a really, really small world. And it's even more true when you get to the director, vice president, senior vice president level within the food industry. There's not many of us, and we know each other and we communicate, and that reputation is critical, absolutely critical. And notice too, inherent in that as well, is that you can only develop those reputations and that good vibes, for lack of a better word, by being outside of your company. And if you can be a superstar food safety, food quality person, but if all you do is live in the world of your company and you never go outside of that, number one, you're shortchanging other people, because food safety is not a point of competition. No. If you're developing really good systems, let other people know. And then that gets attention, right? So if Campbell's looking for someone for a role and they see that out there, that they're speaking at conferences and they're posting on LinkedIn, and they have contacts within your company with some of your people that on your team, now you can start looking at them and approaching them and saying, hi, have you ever considered coming to work for me? And boy, you can build some strong relationships that way. I remember a personal story for me. I was applying for a role, and this is back when White Wave Foods was first starting, and I came out for an interview, and the head of quality at the time was a gentleman named Chris Apple. Fantastic guy, super intelligent, knew a ton about quality, and I was scheduled for an hour interview with him, Campbell. And I had a plane back home on the East Coast later that night, and I actually missed that flight, because our hour conversation turned into 4 hours. Wow. We talked for 4 hours. Yeah. And by the end, he said, all right, when are you coming?
when you're coming in, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I knew it's like, yes, this is who I want to work for. This is someone that I can learn from.
Yep.
I'm not catching up on the comments here. Hi, Jill. Good to see you. We have a good conversation going here, I think, between Tim and Anil. It looks like good. We'll read through that. If you guys have any questions, definitely throw those in. So part of what we wanted to dive in here today is kind of the mechanism that in marketing, they call it a funnel, the marketing funnel of, you have a whole bunch of people at the top, and then how do you bring that down to find whatever objective you're looking for? So a new member of your team, selling somebody a product, whatever it is. And that funnel at the top is always wide. So Campbell, if you're looking to hire someone, what is your process? What's your step one?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you about an experience I had when I was in Saudi Arabia. We went to India for a mass recruitment exercise. So we had 40,000 employees. We were recruiting 12,000 every year. So for the quality team, we had about 500 employees, and we were recruiting more than 100 every year just because of the turnover, 20%, 30% turnover. And that's due to the nature of the environment there with visas and local employees and things. So we would go to India, and I did interviews of more than 150 interviews in one day. And you had to just filter them, So I came up with 5 questions. I started. The first question was, what does HACCP stand for? And then, if they couldn't tell me what HACCP stood for, then it's next, please. So I think that's quite a good filtering mechanism. Key terminologies, key acronyms, really test people's knowledge. I always like to start the interview process with an explanation of get people to explain their career and their key accomplishments, and that tells you a lot about the person. What like, you don't want them to just read out their CV. Although one guy once turned up to an interview with me, and the CV was a copy and paste of my LinkedIn profile, so he didn't last very long. So, when they interview, you don't want to just read out the CV. If they focus in on their key accomplishments, it tells you as the interviewer what things they see as important, what highlights for them and what they want to exaggerate on. So that's quite a good technique to practice before you go for interviews, is think about that question. If someone tells you to explain your career, what's your elevator pitch? What are the things that you would say to somebody in 5 minutes, 10 minutes that really highlights the key achievements that you've been able to achieve in your career?
Definitely. And that's a key point, is that your resume, your CV is simply an introduction. So when you're going through all this information and you've got a bunch of resumes on your desk and you're looking to hire someone, I'm looking at that resume for maybe 5-10 seconds and saying, pass, fail, pass, fail. Okay, put this in. No, yes, no, yes. And that's all it's meant to do. It's just meant to give an invitation into the door. It's never, I would never hire anybody just based off of a CV. That's a recipe for failure. It's just meant to get an understanding of that person. And
you'd be lucky these days if even a human looks at it. They get scanned by AI, and if you don't have the right keywords in there, then you don't even get looked at. So that's the first step. Have the right CV.
Oh, but that's a really good point. Is that we have to kind of get around that AI gatekeeper as well. And you see videos out there on, it's almost like search engine optimization for a website. It's like, okay, I need to include all these keywords and all these action phrases and everything else. And it almost becomes a bit of a game, which kind of goes back to what we're talking about. We're a couple of old guys, so maybe that's just what we are. But it's the people side, right? It's like, okay, if that AI system isn't doing a good job of finding the right candidates, then it's no good, right? It's never going to replace.
You can't rely on that, hopefully. And especially in quality and food safety, I think some of the things we're looking for you can't just say I want this particular qualification or this particular skill. You might see somebody who comes from a completely different field, automobile industry or something, but they've got really good quality, Lean Six Sigma, black belt. They really understand, and they've got a good reputation of continuous improvement. And you want somebody who can drive continuous improvement. They don't necessarily need to be an expert in the food industry to do that.
That's a really good point. You have to be careful for that. I know I'm guilty of it. We tend to silo. And this is especially bad in the food industry, in that, and I rail against this as well, Campbell, is that the dairy people don't talk to the meat people, don't talk to the produce people, right? We're all in our own little groups, and we think that our information is unique and special for that group. No, right? There's different nuances for how those different operations function. And the biggest differentiation, of course, is FDA versus USDA. But you can learn a lot from those other groups. If you really want to get a good understanding of environmental pathogens and management in a very difficult environment and production facility, talk with the beef people, right? And what they have to do. They're cutting edge in a lot of ways in how they're tackling their concerns around E. coli 0157. You can probably take that information and then transmit that into your operations, no matter what industry and food you're working in. So don't write them off. The other key point, and I've seen this, I'm curious to get your take on this as well, Campbell, is that over the years, my reliance on a formal education has gone down. So just because you have a degree doesn't mean as much as it used to.
And some people send me their CVs, and they're like, they've got PhDs and masters, and you're like overqualified. And that can be worse than having not enough qualifications, because too academic and don't really have that practical boots on the ground sort of experience.
You'll see it on LinkedIn, where you'll see somebody's profile, and they'll have this giant alphabet soup of certifications after their name. And it's like, okay, but you're also telling me about you as well. So you value all of this academic education, which you think leads to a certain outcome. What did you do with that information? Or are you just collecting certifications?
Yeah, exactly. And we're fortunate nowadays. I think the universities are starting to wake up to that, and they're starting to provide some practical experience as part of their degrees. But those internships and that practical experience is probably more valuable in a lot of ways than the classwork. You want someone who's intelligent and can learn and can apply their knowledge, but you want practical hands-on experience, definitely.
And what I look for as well too on this initial screening phase is, did these potential applicants actually put in some work? Are they just simply, back to the marketing analogy, are they just sending out their information to everybody, hoping that something sticks, which is a bad thing? Or did they actually do a little research? Do they know who I am? Do they know my background? Do they understand the company and the products? Even, and if you just do a cursory Google search, I'm gonna figure that out pretty quick. But if you're like, oh, well, yes, Mr. Mitchell, I've been following up on your company very closely, and I see that recently you guys had a very large acquisition. How is the integration going with that new company? Right? I'm going to go,
I've done their homework.
And you can't do that in a suck up way, right? You need to do that with genuine curiosity. And you're trying to figure out, and again, this goes back to the two-way street with the interview. I want to gauge your thought process around you as the head of quality. How are you actually approaching this? And then I get some insights into your thought processes as well.
And I recommend to people, don't be afraid of the personal approach. Walking up to somebody at a conference or sending a personal note on LinkedIn. I mean, the worst thing that can happen is somebody ignores you or somebody says no. But I always respond to anybody that I come across and help them, because I know people that helped me in early stages of my career and gave me a foot in the door or a step up. And giving people that opportunity is really, and then you watch what happens to them, watch them grow, is really
Yes.
some of the rewarding parts in your life. So I really enjoy that.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I have former colleagues and members of my teams from my past career who are now vice presidents and senior vice presidents at major food companies. And
Yeah,
I love that
yeah,
because I saw in them that potential and that let them run. And they did fantastically well. And the benefit of that as well, Campbell, is I know that I can pick up the phone, call any one of those people at any time and ask them a question, and they're going to be happy to talk with me. And the
exactly.
reverse works as well too. You build
Yep.
those relationships. Critical, absolutely critical.
And I think that's what most people miss out on when they're applying for lots of jobs is you can apply for 100 jobs and you get 100 rejections or 0 answers. But if you put that extra effort into one job that you're really interested in, go that extra distance, reach out to somebody that you know or somebody that knows somebody that works there, that foot in the door makes all the difference.
Yes, absolutely. So you always need to think of this as you're looking to buy a new home. And whenever I've gone through this transition process, I would imagine you have a similar mechanism as well. Is okay, as I'm looking for a new home, what are the musts, the wants, and the nice to haves for that home? So,
Yeah,
okay, it must be below this price. It must be within 15 minutes of where I work. It must have an office in the house, etc. That way
yeah,
you can then remove those homes from your list that don't meet those basic criteria.
yeah.
And then you can move down the list and narrow it down. This is it. We're saying the same thing here. As I'm looking for a new role, what are those things that I must have in that role that I'm looking for? Because if you can't find those things and you accept a role as a compromise, you're not going to be happy.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I think it's easy to get desperate and to think that you'll just take anything, but you can end up wasting everybody's time. You waste your time, you waste the company's time. You're not going to be happy. It's yeah, a negative situation for everybody.
Yeah, that's a good point, Campbell, because then you end up in this downward spiral where you accept a role that you're not exactly thrilled about. You get into it, you don't like it. You can't hide that. People are going to see it. You exit the role, you try and quickly find another one, and it just continues down that really bad path. Don't get caught on that.
And for me, that's one of the warning signs in somebody's CV is 6 months here, 6 months there, 6 months there. More than 3 or 4 chopping changes within their career. But for me, also, I don't like people that have spent 25 years in the one company either. That also makes me think, well, unless they've had quite good career progression, within a large organization, there's so much to be said for experience, but you can have 10 years of bad experience as well. So
Yeah.
it's not just the amount of time that you're spending with a company.
Well, that's a good point because if you have someone who is a career person at a company and they're looking for a new role, and they pretty much stayed in the same type of activity their entire career and didn't advance, that's bad signs. Plus, then you also have the risk of, well, when I worked at XYZ company, here's how we did things.
Yeah.
I don't care, right? That's not how we do things here.
Yeah.
That's not the Bible. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It used to be when we were younger, the rule of thumb on resumes and CVs was that anything less than 5 years at a company, you were a job hopper, and that's come down.
That times now, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's probably more like 1 or 2 years now.
Yeah.
There's a lot more. I think there's a lot less people looking for jobs, so there's a lot more opportunity out there. So there's a lot more people, chopping and changing. But
Yeah.
it is very much like a musical chairs type of thing because the food industry is not that big, so everybody knows that so and so went from there to there to there to there.
Yep. Absolutely. And this brings up another key point relative to your strategy. And this applies on both sides of the equation is a lot of times, and I think this is a big mistake, Campbell, is you get a contact from a recruiter and you're like, recruiters. No, they can be valuable allies. And I have 2 or 3 recruiters that I have used and stay in contact now with for 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
I know them. I trust them. They know who I am. and that relationship is valuable. Do you agree?
100%. That they know your history, they know your wants and your needs. You know, you don't even need to update your CV. You can just talk to them, and it works both ways too. If you're looking for recruiting people to come and work for you, they know what type of person you are and what you like and what you don't like, and so forming those relationships with key recruitment companies is critical.
Yep, definitely. I would say that, yeah, the relationship theme is coming through very strongly in our
Yeah,
conversation here.
yeah,
So with that as well, one of the things, so we're working our way down this funnel, and we've eliminated. So the point here, right? So in Pakistan, you're eliminating, and to your point, what does HACCP stand for? I think I said earlier, we have a good. I've seen this one before, right? What does HACCP stand for? Have a cup of coffee and pray.
I like that one.
Now, part of that too is if someone was to bring this up in an interview and tell a joke like this, and then say, "Oh, here's what really stands." Good, a sense of humor. I
Yeah,
like that.
I like that. Yeah.
That is a good thing. And so kind of that you do that initial screening and you get rid of the people who are obviously not good fits. My next step then is scheduling phone interviews with those people. How about you, Campbell?
Yep. I always like to do it face to face. I like to look
Yeah.
people in the eye. So we normally get our talent acquisition team to do the initial phone screening,
Uh-huh.
where they just sort of talk to the person, make sure that what they're saying in their CV resonates, and they're able to speak to it. It's more of a fraud check, I guess, or is this appear genuine on the surface, and do they seem like a good fit?
Yeah.
Are they looking for the right remuneration within the plus or minus of the position, so that there's no misunderstanding of the role and the job description and the scope, and are they willing to relocate if necessary, all those sorts of questions. So there's a few sort of pre-screening things that you need to do just in that initial phone screen,
Mm-hmm.
and then they'd come to me as the hiring manager, and then I'd get them to go through their CV, but then I ask some specific sort of behavior-based questions. So that there's the STAR approach: situation, tactic, action, and results, and that's
Uh-huh.
quite a good thing to keep in mind. Interviewers use it all the time, and it's a good way to frame your answers. So
Mm-hmm.
describe the situation. What was the tactic that you used? What was the action that you took? And then what was the outcome? What was the results? And quite often people miss that last bit.
Yeah.
And as an interviewer, you want to know what was the result. What was the drop in complaints per million, or what was the how did you prevent the recall, or what was the KPI that changed? How was
Mm-hmm.
the impact? How did what you do impact the performance of the business? And so always tag that last little bit on the end and say, and then this happened, and that was the result. So
Uh-huh.
that's something that I'm always looking for, is that people are numbers based. Actual action provides an outcome and a result. And
That's a
then
really good tip.
I like to assess their sort of level of empathy.
Mm.
I've worked with some people who sort of fall into that class of sociopath in the past. And look, there's a lot of sociopaths in business, and CEOs. A lot of CEOs could be classed as sociopaths, and
Yeah.
that's really just a lack of empathy. People think it's all in it for them, and they don't understand that we're this open mindset. We should be thinking about what's in it for everybody else as well, because only together can we succeed. Nobody is in a bubble. So I always ask a question: who do you admire? And
Mm.
if you've got strong empathy, you can answer that question straight away. And in
Yeah.
fact, I was doing an interview with one of my bosses. The two of us were interviewing this person, and I asked the interviewee, "Who do you admire?" And my boss has got so much empathy that he immediately jumped up and said, "Oh yes, I admire this person, that person. I know them really well." And I was like, "I wasn't asking you. I was asking this guy." But you can just show that some people just have empathy like bubbling out of their skin, and other people are very introverted. And if it takes a long time for somebody to answer that question, you have to think, well, who's the most important person in their life? Are they just thinking about themselves all the time, or are they more of a team operator? And obviously somebody that's too much on the sort of sociopathic tendencies, you don't want those people in your. They could be very successful, they could be very hard workers, but they don't work together well as a team.
Right. And so what you'll notice here, so you can tell that Campbell's a very experienced hirer, is that he's asking open-ended questions. It's like, tell me about how you feel around this, or how would you react in this situation? You don't find good people by asking questions like, well, where do you see yourself in 5 years, right? You're going to get, they're ready for those questions. You're going to get a canned response, and that's worse. It's not helping anybody in those type of situations. So, I mean, definitely. So some good advice here. I want to reflect back what Campbell is saying here as well, is that you have your initial HR screening, and then you're going through another level to kind of do that gut check with the people that have now been moved down in the funnel. And what we're doing right here, this face-to-face, right? Most of the information we convey as human beings is nonverbal.
Yep.
How are they reacting? What are they making weird faces when you ask a question? Are they going, what? Right? What are they doing in those situations? You can learn a ton just from that initial screening. Even on a Zoom call, you can still get that information. Yep. Because the bottom line is, if I'm hiring a member of my team, a director or what have you, I am personally involved in that. And I'm probably not going to have time to interview intensely, maybe 5 or maybe a little bit more than that. Not a whole lot of people. When they get to that level, when I'm screening them, I want to do a deep dive at that point in time. My team has done the work to get the initial screening process done because, number one, as we talk about in here as well, Campbell, your team needs to understand who you are. They should be acting as your proxies. If there's a disconnect there, that's something you need to go back and fix too. But you then move to that phase. So one of the things that I like to do then, after that screening process is done, I will then schedule Zoom calls with potential candidates like this. And I'll schedule an hour. And it's always an hour for a reason. What I've found over my career is if I'm talking with someone for a potential role, and I'm asking them questions like we're talking about here today, and I'm looking at the clock at about the 30-minute mark, or I'm running out of stuff to ask at the 30-minute mark, that's a bad sign.
Yeah.
Right? But if that conversation blows past the hour and we're still talking and it's 15 minutes past, and I look at the clock and go, oh, crap. I'm sorry, we've gone over time. Can you keep talking? Oh, yeah, absolutely. No problem. Right. It was like my example early with Chris at White Wave, right? That 4 hours of talking with Chris just flew by. Absolutely. I couldn't believe, how easy and good that conversation was. That's a big indicator that that's somebody you should bring in for a face-to-face.
I have to say though, some people that I've interviewed, they spend all their time talking about themselves, and then you end up waiting for them to finish answering the question. So it doesn't mean people should draw out their answer to make it the full hour.
No.
Yeah.
Because we're evaluating them, and you reference this as well. Is we're evaluating for how do you think as much as the answer itself. What is your thought process? Plan, do, check, act again. Here's what we had. Here's what we put in place. Here's how we went back and verified the results that we wanted. And here's the course correction we made to get us back on track.
Yeah.
Perfect. I love that. No one expects perfection. If there was a roadblock or an obstacle, what did you do about it? You can learn a lot about people with those type of questions. So here's one of my favorite questions, and this one's in my book. And it's before I asked the question, I was absolutely amazed how few people, Campbell, could actually answer this question. And it's kind of funny because I was laughing the other day. So Elon Musk, right, sent out this email to all the government workers here in the US. What are the 5 things you accomplished? And their feathers all ruffled. And I'm like, that should be extremely easy.
Yeah.
But my question I asked during interviews is this, and everybody here, think about this for you as well. is, okay, Campbell, I've really enjoyed our conversation here today for my open role. As you look back on your career so far, you've done a ton of amazing work in your career. What are the top 3 things that you're most proud of?
Yeah,
Mm.
a very good question.
And it gives you so much opportunity to dig into the details.
And you
So
should
what
be
do they choose?
Yeah, should be well prepared for those
Yeah.
top 3. Yeah, and
And
it shouldn't need to be rehearsed, or shouldn't need to be. You shouldn't have to read off a script or anything. But that should be top of mind. You should especially going into an interview, you should automatically know what the interviewer wants to hear about, and what you're most proud of, and it's sort of an opportunity for you to specifically talk about the elements that are in the job description. If this is a job that you really want, and it's, I don't know, it's designing HACCP plans for a meat industry, you can say, well, when I was back there, we designed a HACCP plan on this startup meat factory. That was my most exciting job, and I really want to do that again. So yeah, and I guess the key thing is to be genuine. A lot of people try to prepare too much and fake it, and you can tell when people are doing that. So that's why you ask these open questions. When you know you've hit the right person, it's so easy for them to talk about what you want to hear.
Yeah, exactly. And with that question, and they know, if they're really proud of something, you'll see their face light up. You can't fake that. They'll be like, oh,
hold it back.
Yeah, I had this really, really difficult audit, and I learned all these type of things. And then another key point around this that I look for in this question is, what do they focus on? Is it, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that? Or is it, yes, I got my team together and we had this giant problem and we all worked through it and we learned a ton. And man, that was one of the best growth experiences of my career. Good answer. I love that.
Yeah.
So we have a question. We have a question here from Jane. I'm sorry, Campbell, what?
I'm saying we should do interview coaching, teach people how to do it.
Yep, absolutely. So Jane has a very good question here. Thank you, Jane. What's your recommendation to obtain feedback from companies after doing a lot of interviews and the company decides to move on with another candidate? Ooh, that's tough. What's your take on that?
That's a really good question. And look, I always finish every interview I do with saying to the person, you've got my email. Feel free to reach out to me. Even if they don't have your email, look them up on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to them. Just say to them, look, I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to do better next time. What are some pointers that I can improve on? And I would recommend doing that immediately after the interview. Reach out to the person who interviews you and say, thank you for your time today. Really enjoyed talking to you. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to improve, or any other further information you want from me. I look forward to a positive outcome or something like that. That type of immediate response has been proven through research that it's a very effective way to get another step in the door as part of the process.
That's good advice, and it shows interest as well. Part of that too is you have to be kind of careful with that as well. So some companies may have very strict policies about that, and they may not be able to talk about why they didn't hire you because it may open them up to potential liability. So it depends on a lot of the company. My advice is if you're preparing for a potential job search, is practice with your friends. And again, we talk about this on the chat as well, Campbell, is we all have blind spots. There's certain things that we do, certain personality traits or things of this nature, that if you're doing mock interviews just like this, where you're talking with a friend and they're acting as the interviewer, you can help suss out some of those things in advance to make sure that you're coming across the way that you would like to come across. So feedback, you can't do this in a bubble. You have to get feedback.
And record those sessions and then watch yourself and then think, is this the person that I would want to? But but don't get too hung up on it. You know, I think a lot of interviews are probably like public speaking. I think people get so nervous about interviews, and
Yeah.
the best way to interview is to be yourself. So I think the most relaxed type of approach is the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And this reflects back to what we said earlier is if I'm hiring, I'm also looking at this with two main categories is, does this person have the technical expertise I need? And is this someone I would like to work with?
Yes. And I think number two is probably more important than number one. Like Warren Buffett says, hire for attitude. You can always teach skills, you know.
Yes.
So get the right person with the right attitude, even if they're not, you know, 100% got the right skills. You can always send them on a course to train them in something.
Yep. And part of this, as well as an aside, as we're sitting here, you know, recording this, is that technology, there's certain skills with technology, as we're having like over this conversation over the internet, is you have to realize there's certain limitations to the technology that you may need to overcome. Is have a good environment, have good lighting. One of the things that takes a while to get used to when you do live streams is so your camera, I see you down about 6 inches below my camera. The human tendency is to look at you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
No, I need to look at the camera.
Look at the camera. Yeah, exactly. Eye contact is very important. Yeah. And
it's hard to do.
And yeah, having a good camera, you know, good resolution, good sound, you know, not disturbed, good internet connection. I had a guy interview for me once, and he took the interview sitting in his car with his phone, and I was looking up at the bottom of his chin. And look, I understand people are busy, and yeah, he might have been doing it on his lunch break or whatever, but that was such a negative experience. And all it would have taken for him to say, look, I'm really sorry, I don't have much time, I'm busy at work, I had to come out to my car during my lunch break to do the interview. If he'd said that, it would have shown that he had a little bit of empathy and understanding about my perspective, and he might have gone further in the interview process. So I think you know, always consider what the other person is seeing, and you know, just explain yourself. People are understanding, but you've got to reach out and tell them why something's happening.
Well, that's a really good point, because unconsciously he sent the message to you that his time was more important than yours.
Yes.
That's not good.
Yeah.
Part of this, and I want to bring this up because I think this is an old school technique that a lot of people don't think about, is number one, what we've been advocating here on our chat here today is if you're looking for a new role, do a targeted approach. Part of what you can do with that is what's known as informational interviewing. You can actually, and people don't do this because it's kind of scary, you can actually contact companies that you're considering working with and talking with people who work there and say, hi, Campbell, my name's Bryan, and I'm considering potentially working at your company. I haven't really picked out any roles yet, but I found you on LinkedIn, and I found your background fascinating. Would you have 15 minutes or so to talk with me about your experience? Who is not going to be flattered by that? Right?
Yep.
And that's your only objective, right? Don't have any hidden agendas. Hey, can you put in a good? No. Your only goal with that conversation is to get their perspective and their understanding of what it is that they do and how they like it. You can learn a ton by doing that.
Yep. And most people love talking about their job, or talking about themselves, or talking about their company, especially a fast-growing company that's highly successful. Chances are those are the companies you want to work for, and those are the companies that are recruiting. You know, so success breeds success. So look for those people that are willing to talk about their business, and they're probably the companies you want to work for.
Yep. So when you're talking with someone, and this is just a skill you develop over time through doing lots of interviews, is as you kind of think about, Campbell, you have candidates who've made it to the final round. You're talking with 5 or 6 people. What attributes, you know, from a technical standpoint, are you looking for in those candidates? What are the things that you're ticking off that you need?
So if I'm looking for someone in food safety or quality role, I like to give them a bit of a case study as sort of the final round to check. Just an example of something that's happened to me in my career that maybe I could have done better, or maybe, you know, potentially could have involved a recall or something, but you know, we were able to avoid it, probably more through good luck than good management, but some situation that potentially could have gone really badly, put that situation to them and see how they would react. What type of communication would they do? What type of investigation? What type of root cause analysis? What type of follow-up? And then what they believe that, you know, preventative action could have stopped this from happening in the first place. Because for me, that type of scenario answers a whole lot of questions for somebody that's in those sort of senior quality of food safety roles, and safety, you know, human safety roles as well. So quite often people have blind spots, you know, that they say, okay, we fixed the issue and we did more training, and that's it, you know. Or we sacked the person. You know, we blamed him. He's gone. It's never going to happen again. Well, you know, people are people. So, and you know, as we've all seen from you know, disasters all over the world, you know, that Swiss cheese type model. You know, you might have all the best controls in place, but as the gaps in the controls line up, then it potentially could become a disaster. So it's having that understanding of risk assessment, risk planning, risk communication, and then risk prevention. So we're all here to learn and improve, and like you said, plan, do, check it. Have they got those thought processes in place?
Yeah, no, that's super smart. Here's a concrete example for everybody. Is okay, well, Mr. Mitchell, thank you for joining me here today for this role of, you know, super senior quality director. Here's a scenario for you. I'd like to know how you would approach this. We have an abnormally high complaint rate in one of our plants. The other plants are doing fine, but this one plant has a really high complaint rate. What would you do? And I just leave it at that. Right?
Yep. So it shows how people are going to involve other people or try to do it themselves. Where their starting point is. Are they thinking about solutions, or they're thinking about the process? Because quite often the process is more important than the actual situation. So, you know, it's a systematic approach, and then it's like, you know, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, and teach him how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. So I like people that take a more systematic type approach to problem solving.
Yep, absolutely. Oh, and here's another good hint too, is when you're doing this round of, you know, secondary screening or even the in-person interviews, schedule that person with a variety of different people. Don't just use your QA food safety team. They should be talking with R&D and procurement and operations. Everyone that normally comes in contact with you within quality and food safety, they need to be talking with them too.
And that can be difficult to manage. You know, consensus doesn't necessarily mean everybody agrees. so you got to be careful that there isn't one person who's a stick in the mud and then he fails everybody. When you might feel quite strongly about a candidate, and this person won't have to deal much with that guy in his role anyway. So I think you got to balance that with the proportionate sort of approach, that everybody has a say, but some people's opinion is more important than others.
Absolutely. And part of this too, and this gets back to why when you get to kind of those secondary rounds of looking to fill a role, you need to be, and to your point, Campbell, empathetic to the other people that you work with. You don't want to be burdening the other department heads with, you know, endless interviews. They're going to get tired of that really fast. So it needs to be down to the leading candidates pretty quickly, and you're looking for their feedback on these issues and respecting their time as well. Because if you do that, the next time this process comes around, they're not going to be as willing to help you.
Yeah. And
we're all busy.
It's good to sort of give them a bit of a pre-brief Tell them what this guy's about or this lady's about. Tell them what the things you like about them, what their strengths are, and so that they go into it pre-armed, that they know what you've already checked, what you've already asked questions about, so that they don't feel like they have to start from scratch again. I've done that with interviews myself. I've interviewed for some companies with like 10 different people, and every time you end up answering the same questions 10 times over, so you don't want it to be like that. You got to be sensitive to the person who's being interviewed as well.
Absolutely. That's a good point, because if I'm being interviewed for a role and I come in and you run me through the ringer for 11 hours of back-to-back interviews without lunch or anything else, and then you throw me back on a plane, I'm not going to look at that very positively either. No. So to your point, I want to reemphasize that because it was a good one, is if you're asking these other department heads to help you with the hiring process, tell them what you want them to focus on. Okay, procurement person, I want you to ask them questions around how they view the supplier approval process and how procurement and QA work together on that.
Yep.
Because they're going to be interested in that too, right? Because they're going to be working with this person, so you need to do that. What are some of the things, Campbell, over your career that you've identified that are red flags for failure? What are some things that people who work in our field crash and burn, or it just doesn't work out? Have you seen some commonalities or things like that?
Yeah, I've had a few people in my career, unfortunately, that I've had to let go, and quite often it's through overconfidence in their own capabilities. So they feel like they're overqualified, or the roles beneath them, or they know more than everybody else, and why do they need to ask that person's opinion? They're the boss, or they're the supervisor, or they're the manager. Everybody should just listen to them. And humans aren't like that. We like to be consulted. We like to be. My wife's great at that. She's a great communicator. She can talk to anybody, and she just goes up to them, and she's quite intelligent, but she asks them quite innocently. So, what do you do? What's important to you? How do you think? And before you know it, people start talking about themselves, because people love talking about themselves. And even though she might know the answer, it creates a really good communication. So I'm guilty of being a bit of a subject matter expert myself, so I have to always be careful of that too. So I think that can be a quite a red flag if people don't see that in themselves and understand that not everybody wants to hear your opinion all of the time. Consult with others, be part of the team. And at the end of the day, if you're the boss, you might be the one who makes the decision, but at least you've consulted and collaborated, and that creates the sense of teamwork.
Yeah, just having that. Well, Campbell's my boss, and I gave him my opinion, and he listened to me, and then he made a decision. That's all I can ask for.
Yep, exactly.
So let's bring this back up to the 30,000 foot, Campbell. So what would you like to leave people with here today?
I think your career, however humble, is a real treasure. I'm quoting the Desiderate if people don't know, but always be proud of your own career. You're never competing with other people. You're only competing with yourself. And at the end of the day, all you can do is improve yourself, improve your career, improve your opportunities to earn money or be more successful. But the power is in you. The most important thing you can do is be positive and collaborate and create networks and create friendships, and that will help you stand the test of time. So build those networks when things are going well. Make hay while the sun shines, and then in times of trouble, you've got people that you can lean on. So that's probably the best advice I could give for someone's career.
That's fantastic advice. Yeah, I look back on the opportunity of the people that I've worked with. Those are my friends, right? They're just not my coworkers. These are people that came along on a journey with me. And so for me, I kind of view it then, Campbell, as the rocking chair test. Is when you're 85 years old and you're sitting in your retirement home in the mountains, and you're looking out over the mountains and the woods and it's beautiful scenery, and you're in your rocking chair and you're reflecting back on your life. Was it good? Did you do what you wanted?
Yeah. They say the value of life is not money. The value is happiness. And what is it in your life that brings you the most happiness? If you're happy with your job, you never work a day in your life.
Yep, good advice. So fantastic chat, Campbell. Thank you very much for your insights. I know a lot of times at the level that we operate within companies, a lot of people don't get to see how that works. So I think we've done an excellent job of pulling back the curtain and giving people a little insight into what matters. So hopefully people find this valuable.
Yep, really enjoyed it. Nice talking to you, Bryan.
Absolutely. So everybody, have a great weekend. Go out and have some fun. Enjoy the weather wherever you're at. And of course, we'll be back here for the Food Safety Chat Live next Friday at the same time, 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, while I'll bring another amazing food safety quality expert like Campbell Mitchell on the show for a fantastic conversation. So in the meantime, enjoy yourself, and we'll see you back here next week. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everyone.